website for the live stream of this meeting. I will ask Michelle to please call the roll to establish the quorum.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Atlas Ingebrigtsen,
Here.
Chambliss,
Here.
Johnson. Johnson, I believe you're on mute, but I can see you, Judy. Ali.
Here.
Lilligren.
Here.
Lindstrom.
Here.
Mousse. Bento.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Thank you.
Great, we have a quorum. Thank you. And before we approve the agenda, I would like I propose moving the fifth business item, 2020-210, Joint Committee same week on the September budget amendment to the top of the agenda. As I understand that staff has some family obligations this afternoon that might constrain their time. So I'm going to make that change and move the September budget amendment to the top of the agenda if no one has objections. And if there are no objections to the agenda, it can stand approved. Did anyone else have any other changes for the agenda? Any changes? Seeing none, we have an approved agenda, and the first business item will be the budget amendment. Next is approval of the minutes, and so I would entertain a motion to approve, please.
Bento moves approval.
Wolf seconds.
Thank you, council members. Any discussion on that motion? Discussion. Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll on the motion.
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Johnson. Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Mousse. Bento.
Aye.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That carries, and I think I heard Councilmember Moose say, Michelle, did you hear him?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yep, thank you. So we'll move into our business items, and with the change on the agenda, we'll move into 2020-210 Joint Committee, and same week, it's the 2020 budget amendment, September budget amendment with Heather Agason-Hubner. Heather, welcome.
Thank you, Chair and committee members, and thank you again for adjusting the amendment. I have a couple 11-year-old girls who are pretty grateful you did that, so thank you. So I'm here to present the September budget amendment. I'll highlight some of the larger projects tonight. Just as a reminder, capital program details can be found in attachment 1, operating program details can be found in attachment 2, and the detailed descriptions at the project level can be found in attachment 3. So one of the things you're going to notice is that I was before you a couple weeks ago doing an info item, and we had talked about moving the Livable Communities program from the operating to the capital, or from the pass-through program to the capital program. You are not going to see that tonight. We really wanted to get ahead of you with a preview of what was going to happen, and we ran into a couple snags, so we're not going to be doing that with you tonight. On the positive side, we did a lot of work with that project, and we have a really good base with all the projects reconciled, and we're going to come up with a plan B that we'll tell you about in the future. So let's start with I'm going to walk you through program by program. So let's start with the Metro HRA. So what we're going to do is we're asking to bring in about $4.1 million of Federal CARES Act funds and an equal amount of expenses. As we've talked about before, we're incurring a higher amount of expenses both on the voucher side as well as the administration side because of COVID. So we're just bringing in federal revenue to help us offset those expenses. We're also going to be moving $500,000 that you approved as part of the 2020, one of your strategic initiatives, from the division management operating budget to our capital program. That will allow us to move forward with capital projects in the 150 council-owned homes that we do have. Specific projects aren't identified right now, but they will be in the coming months and year, and then we will have those funds available. Really what happened here is we've been doing an assessment of all of the homes, and with COVID, we just can't get into the homes in the way that we normally would. So this is just really preserving that money. So once that full assessment is done, we can go through with capital type projects, such as putting roofs on and houses and asset management related work of like kind of a higher dollar amount. So these aren't dollars that are going to be used to fix a door or to fix a window. It is really kind of bigger investments in our housing. So let's transition to parks. So we're asking you to authorize just over $2 million of funds to the Regional Parks Equity Grant Program. Again, this is follow-up from the conversations we've been having over the past couple months, actually probably a year and a half now. So it's about $1.4 million in interest earnings, and the balance will be in regional parks bonds. So what this is really asking you to do is to set that up to amount for the equity or the Regional Parks Equity Grant Program. And then park staff will come through and you'll be talking more about the solicitation and scoring project and scoring criteria. So none of these dollars will be going out the door until the individual grant projects are awarded. This just really locks up the money so that staff can say, you know what, we have budget authority to do this. So that we have certainty that we can award those projects in the future. We are also asking to reallocate authorized funding in 3 acquisition projects. And that money is really, the project is done and we're moving that money back to the parks acquisition account so that we can program that in future parks acquisition projects. And again, that money will not go out the door unless the council specifically approves a specific authorization project. Lastly, in parks, we're asking to close out just over $15.6 million of park projects. These projects have all been completed and their funds have been fully spent down. This budget amendment supports the Thrive outcome of stewardship through responsible planning and management of resources for the Community Development Division through operating, pass-through, and capital programs. The Thrive outcomes of prosperity, equity, and livability are supported by providing rent assistance to low-income families and safe and affordable housing. That is the end of my presentation tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Heather, for that. Questions from committee members? Questions? No, Heather, I do have a question relates to the land acquisition and the reallocation of the land acquisition funds, and none of them are very, well, most of them are not very large amounts. Mm-hmm. Is there a total anywhere? Did I miss it? Was there a total of?
Mr. Chair, may I ask a clarifying question? So are you asking a total of the 3 that we're asking to roll back into the parks acquisition program? Yeah. Okay, give me 1 second if you might. I'm going to scroll to that dollar amount.
Okay, and I'm sorry if I just missed it. My apologies.
Oh, no, Chair, that's okay. So I'm just adding up. So there's 10,000, 10, 20. Between the 3 projects, it's just about $35,000 just eyeballing it.
All right, and then okay.
So it's not a large amount of money. Nearly all the funds were spent, and that's what was left, and we're rolling that back into the program so that it can be reauthorized on a future project.
Well, thank you, Heather. Any other questions for Heather on the September budget amendment? Any questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved. This is Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second by Chambliss.
Okay, thank you, council members. And any discussion on the motion? Discussion. Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Atlas Ingebretson.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musse.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That motion carries. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Yep, take care. Then we'll move back to the top of the business agenda to item 2020-233, a joint committee item. It's the City of Watertown 2040 Comprehensive Plan and Comprehensive Sewer Plan. And Freya Thaumann is here with us to present. Ms. Thaumann, thanks for being here.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Freya Thaumann, and I'm the sector representative for District 1, and today I'll be presenting the City of Watertown's 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Before I begin, I wanted to thank the City of Watertown, their city planner, Mark Cultus. Watertown's a small community, and the city has been working really hard to create a great plan, and so just wanted to appreciate Mark and the city administrator, Shane Finran, as well. The City of Watertown is a recipient of one of the council's planning grants to help with the comprehensive planning process. So I'll just begin with the next slide. Watertown is a small community of just under 5,000 people located in northern Carver County on the western edge of the region. It's completely surrounded by Watertown Township, and then Franklin Township is located north of Watertown in Wright County. Thrive MSP 2040 identifies Watertown as a rural center. These small towns are surrounded by agricultural lands and serve as a business and recreational center for the surrounding area. The City of Watertown has an orderly annexation agreement with Watertown Township. That agreement covers about 2,200 acres. You can see here on this slide the City of Watertown's existing boundary with the black line, and then the yellow area surrounding that black line is the annexation area, the area covered by that orderly annexation agreement. The City of Watertown has authority to plan for the areas of Watertown Township, which are within the orderly annexation agreement. Next slide. The regional systems in Watertown are regional park system elements. Natural features and natural areas are part of Watertown's character. You can see the Crow River kind of generally running northeast, southwest through the central part of the city. And then the Regional Trail Search Corridor, which is the Western Carver County Regional Trail Search Corridor, is directly west of the Crow River, shown in orange here. And then there's another Regional Trail Search Corridor, the County Road 10 Search Corridor, which is kind of in that southeast section of the city in orange. The Loose Line State Trail runs east-west through the center part of Watertown. Watertown has its own local wastewater treatment plant and is not on or planned to be on the council's regional system. And the city is served by primarily county roads, county state aid highways, and local roads. Next slide. This slide shows the forecasted growth for Watertown. Between 2020 and 2040, the council forecasts that the city will grow by 2,300 people, representing 1,000 households, and that there will be an increase of 460 jobs in the city in the same time. Next slide. As mentioned, Thrive MSP 2040 designates Watertown as a rural center. Communities with a rural center designation are expected to have net residential densities of 3 to 5 units per acre for new and redevelopment. As shown here and in Table 2 of the staff report, the city's net residential density using the council's revised MUSA guidelines are 3 to 5.3 units per acre, which is consistent with council policies for rural center communities. Next slide. Watertown is really rooted in its rural heritage. It has a traditional, vibrant downtown with surrounding neighborhoods and an abundance of natural resources. The existing land uses are shown here. The yellow is the single family residential. There's predominantly a lot of single family residential, as well as smaller areas of multifamily, mixed use residential, and manufactured housing. Existing land uses also include institutional, agricultural, parks and open space, commercial office, and then undeveloped lands is about 28% of the remaining existing land uses. You can see on the slide here, the surrounding land uses that are in Watertown Township outside the border are primarily agricultural and undeveloped. Next slide, please. This is the city's 2040 future land use. The city's 2030 plan was the base for the 2040 plan, but some of the changes that occurred with the 2040 plan was additional higher density development and redevelopment within the city's downtown mixed use business district, which is the red area shown on this map. The city also included a new mixed use category. It's shown with a blue crosshatch, generally in the southwest part of the city. And then the city also included new high density residential on the east side of the city. It's located right next to that orange medium density on the east side of the city. Interesting for Watertown, this small community has had an aging commission in place since 2005, and its comprehensive plan included a section on housing for aging adults. The city has identified that affordable senior housing is a priority for the community now and in the future. So this slide with the future land uses reflect that orderly annexation agreement within Watertown and the agreement with Watertown Township. The majority of the land that's being annexed is guided low density residential in yellow, shown here. Next slide. This figure shows the orderly annexation area and staged development phases. With the orderly annexation agreement, future land development will occur in an orderly and phased manner with extension of utilities and public facilities consistent with the city's 2040 plan and staged plan and development here. Next slide. Staff review found the City of Watertown's 2040 plan conforms with Metropolitan system plans, is consistent with council policies, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent local governmental units in affected jurisdictions. Next slide. This plan is scheduled for the October 13th Environment Committee and then is on the agenda for the Metropolitan Council meeting on Wednesday, October 28th. The proposed actions before you today, which are also on page 1 of the staff report, are to authorize the City of Watertown to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, and to advise the city when available to provide to the council the date the county approved the local water management plan and the date the city adopted the final local water management plan, and to provide a copy of that final adopted local water management plan if it differs from the version that was contained in the plan submission. This other advisory is to advise the city that a property which is identified by PID within the staff report was enrolled in the Agricultural Preserves Program after the city's plan submittal, and that this newly enrolled area will need to be shown on the city's future land use map prior to final plan adoption. And then finally, to implement the advisory comments in the review record for forecasts, land use, water supply, and housing. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond, for the report and for your work on this, and our thanks to the officials from Watertown who did this work as well. Any questions on that report, committee members? Any questions? All right, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the series of actions recommended by staff.
Johnson moves.
Thank you.
Wolf
Councilman.
seconds.
Thank you, council member. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion. Hearing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebrigtsen,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musse,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. That item is adopted. And thanks again, Ms. Harmon. And we'll move on to our next business item, 2020-239, another Joint Committees item. It's the City of Lino Lakes 2040 Comprehensive Plan and Comprehensive Sewer Plan. And Jake Riley is here to present. Welcome, Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Chair Lilligren. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you can.
All right, great. Thank you. Thanks, Craig. I'm Jake Riley. I'm a sector representative for District 3 in the Local Planning Assistance Group, and I'll be presenting the City of Lino Lakes 2040 Comprehensive Plan, which is in District 11. And I'd like to let the committee know and thank the, and also at the same time thank the City of Lino Lakes Community Development Director, Michael Grachala, who's in the audience today, along with his team, City Planner Katie Larson, and Consulting Planner Kendra Lindahl. The team, including consulting engineer John Christensen, worked really hard with us to achieve this point in the cycle, and I'm really grateful for their collaboration and hard work. And so in front of you today is the review of the City of Lino Lakes 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Next slide. In front of you, you see the regional systems map, which references figure 1 in your... We've got a little bit of lag, sorry, of the staff report, and identifies the location of regional system components within the City of Lino Lakes. Of note are Interstates 35E and W, the Rice Creek Chain of Lakes Regional Park, and several regional trails that connect that regional park with others. Next slide. The City of Lino Lakes community designation is an emerging suburban edge community, which is consistent with the Thrive MSP 2040 and identified as such in the plan. Thrive describes emerging suburban edge communities as those that are in the early stages of transitioning into urbanized levels of development and are expected to plan for forecasted population and household growth at overall densities of at least 3 to 5 units per acre. Lino Lakes is located in the southeast corner of Anoka County and is surrounded by a number of communities. And what I think of as being interesting is that Centerville is wholly contained within the City of Lino Lakes. We maybe should start keeping a list of those, because I know that I think it's Councilmember Vento is interested in knowing that data point. Next slide. Forecasted growth for the City of Lino Lakes represents a requested forecast adjustment. So I'm going to reference those numbers when I speak about the chart. The city will grow by 8,800 people, representing 3,600 households, and an increase of 1,300 jobs between now and the planning horizon of 2040. The city and the Metropolitan Council staff came together to make an agreement about the requested forecast adjustment that both respects their interest in significant growth and the region's forecast based on our models. So you can see on the next slide, Table 2, also in your staff report, shows the sewer service forecast growth, which is of course what we are most interested in at this point. Lino Lakes Plan does include information for the post-2040 horizon. In your actions today and those of the council next week will address only the 2040 planning horizon. And any additional alternative TAZ allocation is found in the document with post-2040 build-out totals significantly higher than the council's approved forecasts. And we will advise, the Met Council staff will advise the city, Anoka County, and MnDOT that the approved table in their final plan is, as noted as Table 6.4, is the allocation that will be used for transportation planning over the coming decade. And similarly, households numbers presented in Tables 8.4 through 8.7 in the plan exceed the community-wide forecasts of households and population, and there's a table in that chapter of Chapter 8, the wastewater chapter, that explains this represents a hypothetical scenario of full build-out and absorption in the city's staging districts. The Metropolitan Council has not committed to this volume of service. There's not demonstrable residential demand to revise the Line of Lakes forecast higher than is described above, and we'll consider this in the future as circumstances warrant. Next slide. The city's planned residential density shown here on table 3, also in your staff report, shows an overall density for guided residential land expected to be between 3.1 and 4.1 units per acre, which is consistent with communities with an emerging suburban edge designation. And with that, we can look at the existing land use on the next slide. The city's existing land use map here shows figure 3, also in the staff report. They're predominantly agricultural and rural residential in use, which is 48% of the land. 13.5% of the city's area is single family residential uses, and there are approximately 3% of the uses near transportation corridors, which are commercial, office, industrial areas. The mix of land uses in the city of Lino Lakes is defined both by the intentionally residential nature of the city, as well as the Rice Creek Chain of Lakes Park Reserve. And approximately 45% of the city's area is made up of lakes, wetlands, and protected open spaces. And the pattern of development in Lino Lakes is naturally affected by the park reserve. The future land use we're showing you in 2 separate slides. Thanks for the next slide, Greg. 2040 future land use refers to figure 4 in the staff report. The city's goals and policies for the 2040 planning horizon were established in the 2030 comprehensive plan and reaffirmed in the 2040 plan according to the plan document. Lino Lakes does introduce some new, more specific mixed-use land use categories in the 2040 plan to accommodate forecasted growth and respond to the market that has taken place in Lino Lakes. The city has a priority of efficient planning for growth that does not negatively impact the vast number of natural resources in the city, and therefore growth management in Lino Lakes is affected by controlling the availability of infrastructure, specifically sewer service. On the next slide, areas of change from 2030 to 2040 are shown in figure 5 from your staff report, and you can see where those land use changes have been made from 2030 to 2040, primarily moving land from a more generic mixed use change to a more specific residential or mixed residential, mixed commercial land use designation. Some areas in Lino Lakes are developing faster than previously anticipated, and therefore will need to take advantage of the regional wastewater system sooner than anticipated, and others are developing more with commercial or more appropriately for higher density residential and mixed uses than anticipated. So this map shows those changes between 2030 and 2040. Next slide. So with that, the proposed findings before you today are that the plan conforms to the Metropolitan System plans, is consistent with council policies with the proposed forecast revisions, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent local governmental units and affected jurisdictions. Next slide. As I noted, the meeting schedule will have the Environment Committee hearing this item on Tuesday, October 13th, Metropolitan Council on Wednesday, October 28th. And the Community Development and Planning team is in the audience to take questions when we get to there. So today's proposed action for you is to authorize the City of Lino Lakes to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, revise the city's forecast downward as shown in Table 1 of the attached review record, and advise the city that prior to final plan adoption, they must revise tables 1.1, 2.1, 4.1, 5.1, 6.4, and 9.1 to reflect the forecast numbers provided in their August 2020 supplemental material. That authorization of the city's 2040 comprehensive plan does not confer approval of the proposed post-2040 improvement to County State Aid Highway 14, also known as Main Street, extending the road east of Lake Drive, which is CASA 23, on new alignment across the north portion of Peltier Lake to 80th Street, with new interchanges constructed at both I-35W and I-35E. This road is not in the Council's 2040 Transportation Policy Plan. And advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for regional parks, transportation, forecasts, and water supply. So with that, we can go to the next slide and I can answer any questions you may have. And if I can't, perhaps someone from the city can help us out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Riley, for your report and for your work on this. Thanks to Mr. Ratala and his team from Lino Lakes as well for their partnership. Questions on that report? Any questions? Councilmember Johnson.
Hi, just briefly, Jake, could you just go over again the discussion that you're in the middle of or working with on the city on population and growth in households? Is it my understanding from the report that they believe they will have more growth than we project or more households needed than we're projecting? Is that what I heard you say?
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson, Chair Lilligren. I think it's perhaps more accurately described as their plan, being their plans for the post 2050 horizon, post 2040 horizon, and we can only authorize things up through the 2040 horizon. And yes, I think there was a little difference in how that was depicted in their first plan, but we have now come to an agreement that allows that sort of appreciates our forecasts and also appreciates the fact that they are their own entity and plan for their needs, if that answers your question.
Yes, Mr. Chair and Jake, thank you. That does. And I really appreciate you working with the local community on that. And I know as time goes on, amendments will be made and plans will be updated. So nothing would eventually prevent them from, executing it as needed. So thanks. Appreciate your hard work on this and working with that local community.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further questions on the report? Councilmember Vento.
I don't have a question. I just want to thank Michael and Katie and Kendra, and if you'd also extend my thanks to John for your work on this. And thanks to you as well, Jake. I don't want to forget to thank our hardworking reps from community development. But it takes a lot of work, and particularly during a time of COVID, it takes even more work. So special kudos to you for enduring all that. And if it's okay, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Please.
I so move.
Thank
Second
you,
by Lindstrom.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindstrom. We have a motion before us. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion. Oh, I thought it was on camera. There we go. Seeing no discussion, Michelle, please call the roll on the motion.
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musse.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. That motion carries, and we will move on to our next item, 2020-238. It's May Township's 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and Mr. Riley will present on this one as well. Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Chair Lilligren. I hope you can still hear me. Excellent.
Yes.
Okay. So today you have in front of you the May Township 2040 Comprehensive Plan, which is in District 12. And I do want to make sure the committee is aware that Nate Sparks, May Township's consulting planner, is with us today. And I'd like to thank Nate for his responsiveness and work to get May Township to completeness. So before you today is the review of May Township's 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Next slide shows the regional systems in May Township and identifies location of those. Of note are the two regional trail search corridors. The Central Greenway North segment runs north-south through the town to the west, and the Glacial Hills corridor runs east to west through the town, eventually connecting William O'Brien State Park with Big Marine Regional Park. Next slide, and I apologize if you can hear my children or my dogs. I have too many of both. Figure 2 from the staff report identifies the city as diversified rural, consistent with Thrive MSP 2040. May Township is located in northeastern Washington County and is surrounded by the communities of Scandia, Marine on St. Croix, Stillwater Township, Grant, Hugo, and Forest Lake. Next slide. The forecasted growth for May Township shows our forecasts show that the township will grow by 950 people, representing 400 households. There will be an increase of 60 jobs in the town in the same time frame. Next slide. The existing land use map. Here it refers to figure 3 in your staff report. The existing land uses in May Township are predominantly open space, vacant, and agriculture, as well as rural residential, which is 36% of each of those two groups. Approximately 6% of the township is long-term agriculture and 8% is held in conservancy, and that's shown in figure 3 as noted in the staff report and in the plan. The plan states that for 125 years, the Maytown Board has acted to preserve the community as one with no commercial, industrial, or retail development, with only single-family dwellings, and with a goal to retain the rural character of the town. The overriding goal and basis for its decision making is to preserve that, and that is how they've moved forward with their future land use map as well. So the 2040 land use map, oh, if you could go back, Greg, that'd be great. Thank you. Refers to figure 4 in the staff report, and it continues. So the future land use plan, as I noted, continues the goals set forth in the township's 2030 plan to retain that primary land use of rural residential, identifying the land as currently vacant or presently used for agriculture. Those rural residential areas are intended to be residential or agricultural in the future as well. And the plan guides development at 1 dwelling unit per 10-acre density, and all new lots within the township must have a minimum of 2.5 contiguous buildable acres. Preservation of key natural and/or cultural resources are identified as a goal of all new development to ensure any such development fits the unique character of May Township. Next slide. Proposed findings today are that the plan conforms to Metropolitan System plans, is consistent with council policies, and compatible with the plans of adjacent local governmental units and affected jurisdictions. This item does not need to go before the Environment Committee and will therefore be at the Metropolitan Council meeting on Wednesday, October 14th. Nate Sparks, May Township's consulting planner, is on the call. And before we take questions, your proposed action is to authorize May Township to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect and advise the township to, when available, provide to the council the date that the Rice Creek Watershed District approved the local water management plan, the date the township adopted the final local water management plan, and a copy of the final local water management plan if it differs from the version contained in the township's November 27th, 2019 plan submission, and implement the advisory comments in the review record for forecast land use and water supply. With that, we can answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Riley, and our thanks to May Township and to Mr. Sparks for their work on this. Any questions on Mr. Riley's report? Any questions? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve this action. Is there a motion?
Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, council members. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion. Hearing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebretson.
Aye.
Chambliss. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musse.
Aye.
Bento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That carries. That motion carries. And we'll move on to business item 2020-231. Excuse me. It's Coon Creek Regional Trail Master Plan Amendment. And Ms. Kinney is here to present. Tracy Kinney, welcome.
Chair, council members, good afternoon. My name is Tracy Kinney, Senior Planner in Parks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Today's item before you is the Coon Creek Regional Trail Master Plan Amendment upon request of Anoka County. Next slide, please. The Coon Creek Regional Trail is located in the north central part of the regional park system in the city of Coon Rapids, Anoka County. The location of the trail is shown in the left and center images of the presentation and in figures 1 and 2 of the business item. The regional trail is a 7-mile trail that connects Bunker Hills Regional Park with Coon Rapids Dam Regional Park. The regional connections are shown in the right image and in figure 3 of your business item. Anoka County is amending their master plan to add a trail overpass over Coon Rapids Boulevard upon request of the city of Coon Rapids. The right image on the screen shows the location. Next slide, please. The regional trail currently crosses Coon Rapids Boulevard, a 6-lane divided arterial roadway at grade at Avocet Street. The image to the right shows Avocet Street at a northeast angle intersecting Coon Rapids Boulevard. The existing trail is shown in red. The image is figure 4 in your business item. Anoka County is proposing to increase safety at this crossing by adding a pedestrian bridge just west of the current crossing. The pedestrian bridge is being planned in coordination with the Coon Rapids Boulevard reconstruction. The left image is figure 5 in your business item. No acquisitions are needed for this trail improvement since they are within the Coon Rapids Boulevard's road right-of-way. Next slide, please. Anoka County conducted an equity analysis for this master plan amendment, as well as a full public engagement process. For the equity analysis, Anoka County identified underserved populations that were nearby the project location. This included a 1-mile and a 3-mile radius. To ensure these residences had the opportunity to participate in the process, Anoka County and the city of Coon Rapids participated in listening sessions with nearby apartment complexes and a local nonprofit called Transformative Circle. The county was able to engage about 30 people from the targeted populations and get their input. The majority of the comments related to safety concerns, including clearing snow and adding lights, sidewalks, and other crossings. The city and county responded to or included each comment into the design and followed up or will follow up with the participants. Anoka County also conducted a full public engagement process that invited participation from the broad public and agency partners. The main topics that were gathered from the public's advice were related to safety, access, cost, use, and other needs. Anoka County and the city of Coon Rapids responded to the comments through the design of the overpass or future process improvement projects. Next slide, please. The development estimate for the bridge is approximately $4.5 million with an annual maintenance cost of approximately $10,000. The city of Coon Rapids is currently requesting state bonding and federal transportation funds for the development of the project. If awarded, the pedestrian bridge could be developed within the next 3 to 5 years. Next slide, please. Staff proposes that we find that the Coon Rapids Regional Trail Master Plan Amendment is consistent with the requirements of the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, Planning Policy Strategy 1, and other council policies, particularly Thrive 2040. Next slide, please. So the proposed action before you today is that the Metropolitan Council approve the Coon Creek Regional Trail Master Plan Amendment and encourage the county to implement the advisory comments in the consistency with other council policies and system section regarding solar, transit, and transportation planning. And I should note that MPOSC unanimously recommended approval of the amendment at its September 3rd meeting. And with that, I'll stand for any questions. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Ms. Kinney. Any questions on that report? Oh, excuse me. Questions on that report? Any questions?
Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, please, Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to see the developments along this corridor, and that the lighting is going to be solar is great. I take the trail not quite that far, but I guess I could take it further with this pedestrian crossing. So I'm happy to see this development.
Thank you, Council Member. Any other questions? Discussion? Councilmember Chambers, did you want to move approval of this item? Councilmember Chambliss?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great.
I move approval.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
This
Wolf
is
seconds.
for Atlas Ingebrigtsen. I'll second.
Thank you. We had a couple of seconds there. Any discussion? Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebrigtsen,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musse,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, and that motion carries. Thanks, Ms. Kinney, for your work and for your report. And we'll move on to our final business item today. It's 2020-240. It's the same week item. It's the Metro HRA Mobility Demonstration Project, and we should have Terry Smith here to present. Ms. Smith, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, and appreciate your willingness to hear a same week item. The timing of this application is extremely tight, so we appreciate the same week. But I'm here today seeking a resolution authorizing submittal of a funding application for the Housing Choice Voucher Mobility Demonstration Program. Next slide, please. Research conducted by Raj Chetty and Nathaniel Hendren out of Harvard and was released in 2015. The report was titled Impacts of Neighborhoods on Intergenerational Mobility. The research question was, do neighborhoods matter for economic mobility? And according to the research team, the answer is yes, as long as children move at a young age, under the age of 13. The research showed that children that moved to safer neighborhoods, lower poverty neighborhoods under the age of 13 experienced higher earnings as adults, so 30% more income as adults. They were 27% more likely to attend college, 30% less likely to become single parents. The report also showed that that moving had little effect on outcomes of children who are already teenagers. So if children moved to new neighborhoods after the age of 13, there was little benefit. And also that moving had little to no effect on the earnings of the parents. In summary, the report shows that exposure to better neighborhoods during childhood is what matters the most. Families with housing choice vouchers may encounter barriers to using their housing choice vouchers in communities with expanded opportunities. Some barriers may be financial, such as saving enough money for a security deposit or maintaining positive credit. Other barriers may include inadequate time to find a unit, landlord unwillingness to lease a unit to a voucher holder, or limited awareness of neighborhood amenities such as location of high-performing schools. Next slide, please. Some PHAs and nonprofits have implemented housing mobility programs to help reduce barriers of families with vouchers to live in neighborhoods of their choice, including areas with high-performing schools, with access to jobs, lower crime neighborhoods, and neighborhoods that have access to parks and other amenities. The types of supports that housing mobility programs provide vary from agency to agency. Some examples of the types of services and additional financial assistance that either the PHA staff or partnering local nonprofit agencies offer may include informing families of high opportunity areas' advantages and helping them to identify such areas using available evidence and research. Addressing financial barriers families may have, such as by providing financial coaching to improve credit scores or help families save money to pay moving costs. Some programs provide grants or loans to families to pay security deposits and application fees, recruiting landlords in higher opportunity areas, and in some cases, providing modest financial incentives to new landlords, helping families search for available units that meet their individual needs, providing post-move services such as regular check-ins, resource coordination, and landlord-tenant mediation to help families keep living and persist in areas of opportunities. The services are extremely time-intensive and are expensive to provide. Metropolitan Council HRA has implemented its Community Choice Program in December of 2015. The program components included in our current program are those that are also listed in the mobility demonstration funding notice, and then consistent with what other agencies across the country are doing. They include landlord recruitment, pre-move counseling, housing search assistance, and post-move counseling. The capacity of current HRA staff in the Community Choice Program are really limited by financial capacity. The supports are expensive to provide. We currently have 46 families enrolled in the Community Choice Program. Next slide, please. Seattle and King County housing authorities implemented a randomized control trial and offered a set of housing mobility related services to some voucher program participants. The initial report indicates the provisions of mobility related services helped create strong gains in the number of families who moved to high opportunity areas. The report indicated that families that received mobility supports and services were 40% more likely to move to high opportunity neighborhoods. Evidence makes a strong case that mobility programs are worth federal investment. Researchers in HUD are now expanding their research to see whether a selected set of services offered at a lower cost achieves similar results. HUD is offering up to $50 million for the Housing Choice Voucher Mobility Demonstration Program. Applicants who receive funding under this notice will be expected to offer mobility-related services to a control group of voucher holders to encourage them to move to lower poverty areas. It's important to state that we recognize that not all families want to move, nor is that what we want. The goal is to open choice for families of neighborhoods that have been historically excluded. So for families that want to make a move, the mobility supports and services are intended to help make that move a success and help families overcome barriers in new neighborhoods. The Metro HRA has a goal of developing an upward mobility umbrella of sorts of services for voucher families, and these would be, this program would be one of those strategies to help families achieve upward mobility. Next slide, please. Minneapolis Public Housing Authority also operates a mobility program. In the Metro HRA and MPHA have been working together for several years to align policies, programs, and systems. Metro HRA, as you likely recall, Metro HRA and MPHA are also working towards obtaining a regional moving to work status to provide flexibility in program operation. There are currently 400 families that are moving back and forth between the city of Minneapolis and suburban locations. Moving back and forth across jurisdictional lines is confusing for tenants and it's administratively burdensome for staff. Metro HRA and MPHA intend to submit a joint application for mobility demonstration program funds. We're working with a few national consultants who agree with our thinking that submitting a joint application will make for a stronger application. MPHA will be the lead applicant on the application, like the fiscal agent responsible for reporting on the grant, drawing down the funds, distributing funding to the program partners to cover the costs of the program. The idea is that Metro HRA will be the program administrator. So we would actually operate the mobility program and the staff would be housed under the Metropolitan Council with the thought that the program funds would pay for those expenses. The Metro HRA has a stronger and more established mobility program that mirrors the federal notice. So we have the program capacity to take that role on. Next slide, please. Here is a sample of a proposed organizational chart that we are required to submit with the application. But as you can see at the top, HUD would be the funder of this program. The arrow going to the left is HUD mobility demonstration. They would be providing technical assistance as well as research support to test the mobility strategies under the demonstration. MPHA, Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, would be the lead applicant. Their director and assistant director of the Housing Choice Voucher Program would be heavily involved in the program design and setup and ongoing relationship. And then they would have some finance staffing involved to draw down the funds, distribute the funds, do the reporting, as well as some data analyst support, help gather data, analyze data, and work with the technical assistants and research advisors on the testing components. Under the Metro HRA side, we would be the program administrator. I would be heavily involved, as well as the assistant director, Stephanie Paulson. And then underneath that, we would have the mobility staff. So we would anticipate hiring a program manager to manage all the efforts of this demonstration. Our calculations indicate that we would need 6 mobility counselors over the 6-year period. We currently have some of those, but the idea is we would have to hire additional staff. We would need some support staff. And then the council has, the HRA has a business systems analyst 3 that will help provide data and data analysis, as well as support from the council's research staff. And then again, the idea is that the program funding would pay for the support staff and the operation of the program. Next slide, please. So inspired by the 2015 research by Chetty and his colleagues, this demonstration will create opportunities for more agencies to implement housing mobility programs and for researchers to test which interventions are the most cost-effective and beneficial to families and overcoming barriers, preventing moves to higher opportunity neighborhoods. The demonstration will also provide about 1,000 additional housing vouchers, and that's for the demonstration overall, not just for Metro HRA, but some additional vouchers will come to support families participating in the program. While the demonstration is an important first step, housing mobility programs would need to be more comprehensive and better funded to expand services to more families that want the services. The whole goal of the demonstration is to improve housing choice for voucher holders. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, we would submit a formal application to HUD by the October 13th deadline. The application requires a resolution approved by the council. HUD is intending to announce program awards in December of 2020, so a quick turnaround. And HUD expects to award grants to 5 to 10 agencies between the amounts of $4 million and $10 million. We understand this will be a very competitive application process. So we're hopeful we have a really good application to get funded, but know that it will be very competitive. And then the demonstration would be effective for a 6-year period. The first year would be a planning year. So 2021 would be a planning year to set us up for the randomized control trial, set up systems and reporting and all of those things. Next slide, please. So the action before you today is that the Metropolitan Council adopt resolution number 2020-17, affirming and asserting its interest in participating in the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's Housing Choice Voucher Mobility Demonstration Program, the willingness to comply with all the applicable requirements, the evaluation and the reporting requirements, and then lastly, authorizing the director of the Metropolitan Housing and Redevelopment Authority, that's me, to sign and submit the funding application for the mobility demonstration program. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to entertain questions.
Thank you, Ms. Smith, for your work on this and for this report. And it looks like a fascinating opportunity. And I really want to thank you for lifting up the fact that not all families want to move, that this does add to choice overall. And I have a question to start, and then I'll ask other committee members as well. And I just think this looks like such a great opportunity to be participating with the Minneapolis Public, or to partnering with the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, and always a good objective, I think. And so this is, sort of a nuts and bolts way of moving forward. So I'm wondering if you can tell Ms. Smith from the application if this collaboration between the regional HRA and the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority supports our application, gives us maybe more points, a little more traction in this highly competitive application process.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We wouldn't get additional points. There are 4 ways that we could apply. One is, independently. One would be as part of a consortium. One, PHA partnering agencies, which is what we're applying under, and then one for small agencies that have family self-sufficiency programs. So they're each, regardless of how we apply, the point spread is the same. But as we're working with these technical advisors from national technical advisors that are providing us with some technical assistance on the application, it's amazing that, they've said it's almost like this NOFA and this funding notice was written for us, because the components outlined in the NOFA are the program components under our current community choice program. There aren't very many mobility programs in the country. I would say under 20. And I'm not aware of any of them that have the post-move assistance like we have with our program. And in my opinion, that's one of the strongest components. I think the second thing to mention that's worth mentioning is that MPHA and Metro HRA have been working together collaboratively for many years. And we have some agreements in place that we'll be able to submit to support that we have been working together. And so I think that will go a long ways in our application.
Great, thank you, Ms. Smith. Committee members, other questions on this report? Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Terry, for that great presentation. I have a question in the weeds on page 6. I was happy to learn about the post-move services, including mediation between landlord and tenants, and I was wondering, is that included in the 6 positions you listed on page 6, or is that going to be contracted by third party?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question, Councilmember Lee. It would be included in the 6 positions. So the mobility counselors would work very closely with the families that are enrolled, and that would be one of the services that we would provide.
Oh, great, thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further questions, Councilmember Lindstrom, and then
Thanks.
Councilmember Evans.
Thanks, Terry. Apologize if you already mentioned this and I missed it, but I know we have 46 families, you said, in the program now. A year from now, 2 years from now, how many folks would you anticipate this impacting? And I know the answer is probably depends if we get 4 million or depends if we get 10 million or something in between. But help me out there. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Lindstrom, the minimum requirements for participation in the program is 1,950 enrollees over a 6-year period. And so it's a substantial number. The first year, again, is a planning year. Years 2 and 3, we would enroll 260 people into the program. Half would be from Metro HRA, half would be from Minneapolis. So 130 each for the first 2 years. And then years 4, 5, and 6, that jumps to 475 families. So, 238, 240 each. And we've done lots of data analysis. We're comfortable with that volume. We have about 600 vouchers turnover every year. And we can also include mover vouchers. So people that have a voucher and are moving for a second or third time can be enrolled in this. So it's not just turnover vouchers. So it's a substantial commitment, but I think it's important.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councilmember Bento, then Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Bento.
Yes, thank you, Terry. This is fabulous. I got my fingers and toes crossed already. And if you mentioned this, I apologize, but do you know how broadly the Chetty and Hendren 2015 research has been shared? I think this would be really important research for us to share with our communities and our counties, state legislative committees, particularly the education committee, frankly, the bonding committee. I think there's a lot of potential for using this information for good.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Vento, I couldn't agree with you more. I think, it's one component of research, but the results are startling. I think, there are some things as we work with our own researchers in-house. Thank you to Matt Schroeder and Christian Myra-Tours, who have really helped us dig into this. There are some flaws in the research, but the results are very compelling. And it's become very clear that children that grow up in low poverty areas have better outcomes as adults. Now, that's not going to equate to every single voucher family. And frankly, a lot of the research was based on white children and not children of color. And so we do have some concerns with that as we're analyzing this data, but I think it's worth testing that if we provide these supports to children of color, what are the supports that help them move to new neighborhoods and help them persist for families, again, that want to move. But I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's been shared broadly in the housing sectors for several years, but in terms of expanding that, I'm happy to forward the report on. I don't know if the link worked in the PowerPoint, but there also is a link to a report in the PowerPoint, and then there's a link in the business item as well. But I'm happy to share that.
Chair, this is Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson.
Please, Councilmember, and then Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson.
Thank you. And I want to both acknowledge, Terry, the very thoughtful way that you presented the information and spoke about not all families wanting to move, and your most recent comments about this research being primarily done with white populations and not communities of color. I also want to acknowledge Chair Lilligren's comments regarding acknowledging that as well, because it is different for communities of color, where culture is an important thing that binds communities together. The outcomes are different. So it is very, so Terry, I was going to say that, but Robert beat me to it as an earlier appreciation for you temper the information in the way that you did, and I appreciate you being very explicit in your response after. Not only is it something where we don't see the same outcomes for communities of color, you actually are taking kids out of an asset location for them. Their culture is an asset for them. It helps build grit and resilience for them. And you can put them into a scenario where they are isolated, where they don't have community. That asset is taken away from them. And we saw this happen, and Terry, you might even be aware, and definitely Robert, when we took down the federal subsidized housing in and the rebuild of what became Heritage Park, and whole buildings were picked up and dropped off at places like Hopkins Cross Road and Blake, in communities that had no public transportation. School districts had significant changes in populations overnight. That's not what we're talking about here, but what we learned from that is how destructive it can be. So I think the key things are choice, and people should have the choice to live where they want to live, and that it's a family decision. But also, I think if there's an opportunity to talk about the importance of learning so that communities of color are a part of these kinds of pilots, and in a thoughtful way, that is super important. So I just wanted to highlight that, to talk about, some of the things to be cautious of, and to appreciate your very thoughtful and explicit language around that, Terry. And we do have examples where this has been very destructive. What communities of color want is to end the disinvestment in their communities where they live, to end the destructive infrastructure projects like what 94 and 35W were in their communities and other kinds of projects. And we should be an organization that's able to contribute both to choice, but also to ensuring that their communities are invested in, not disinvested in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Council Member. And I just let the committee members know the link on the PowerPoint that's with the agenda on the website is live. So it takes you directly to the Harvard report. Council Member Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Terry, this is just great. Thank you for bringing this forward, working so hard on it. I just echo what everyone else has said. And maybe you covered this, but it's a $4 to $10 million grant per organization, correct? And do you have, and maybe you went over this, but do you have in mind what our number would be? And then that's for funding it fully for the 6 years, correct? So the amount would be then prorated over the 6-year period, correct?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Johnson, it's funding, yes, for the entire 6 years. We do not submit a budget with our application, so I think it will depend, how much money we get will depend on how many applications HUD gets, how compelling those applications are, how many they fund. You know, if they fund closer to 10, then the, you know, individual grants may be smaller. If they fund closer to 5, then maybe agencies will get more. But the minimum size for all applicants is 1,950 vouchers. So for a small agency, that's a considerable commitment that they may not be able to match. And so I know it'll be extremely competitive, but I expect it'll be medium to large size agencies. But that's all we know at this point.
And then, Mr. Chair, just a quick follow-up. And so with that, Terry, again, you're at least at the high level scope of what we're trying to do. And then if we are awarded, we'll tailor it back to whatever amount we get, or tailor it up to whatever amount we get. I don't know. And then with the demonstration piece on this, will there be a way to, and I'm sure you would, incorporate in the application just again how, you know, we really do want to be able to share out what we learn, right? So that this can be replicated, the successes can be replicated, and the things that we learn can be pushed forward into transformational change as well. So, you know, I'm just really grateful. And I hope we get selected. I think for all kinds of reasons, we're the region that's ready to go, you know, for all the right reasons. So I just want to, you know, say thank you for your work, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Further questions or discussion on that report? Discussion or questions? Seeing none, Ms. Smith has proposed an action that we affirm and assert our interest and move forward with the application for the mobility demonstration program and give Ms. Smith the authority to sign on our behalf. Is there a motion to approve?
Bento moves approval.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second by Chambliss.
Thank you, Councilmember. Discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musse.
Aye.
Bento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That motion is adopted. Ms. Smith, thank you for your work. Good work and good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And council members, we will move on. We have dispensed with our business agenda for this evening, and now on to our information agenda, and it is the 2019 plat monitoring report. Reyes Smalley is here to present to us. Mrs. Smiley, thank you for being here. And maybe we can't hear you. Nope, still can't. Can others hear? Can anyone hear?
Nope.
Nope.
Just
Give me 1 second. Can you hear me now?
There, now we can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Raya Smiley, and I'm a senior planner in local planning assistance, and I'm here to present to you the 2019 Plat Monitoring Program report. Next slide, please. Perfect. So I would like to first start with a big picture. I have shown this before when I was presenting the 2018 report, but it's a good reminder, just kind of what's going on with all of the pieces that we have at the council and how they relate to one another. In the heart of the long-range planning are comprehensive plans. And that those set the stage for guiding and planning for future land uses to accommodate population growth. And comp plans go through the decennial update for a big picture overhaul, as you have been seeing many of them coming through the committee, 3 of them just today. And there are amendments for interim changes as well, some of which you have also seen in the past several meetings. The plans provide the basis for land use inventory with existing land uses. We also receive information on building permits annually from all communities that shows new developments that are being constructed in the region. Our research department in the community development works on that with all the communities. These data sets are complemented by the Agricultural Preserves Program that my coworker Jerome Benner presented to you in August. And the Agricultural Preserves identifies areas that are protected from development. And then there's the Plat Monitoring program, which tries to capture land that will develop in the near future. So this is the stage before the building permits are issued, and that's why we generally refer to the program as a credit program. Next slide, please. Thank you. So today, the Plat Monitoring Program, I want to just give you a little bit of a background. The Plat Monitoring Program started in 2001 with Plat data from 12 communities that joined the program voluntarily, and they reported from year 2000. The program was established with input from the Association of Metropolitan Municipalities, which is now known as Metro Cities, and the Builders Association of the Twin Cities. The purpose is to monitor the residential development, including the number of units and acres platted, the mix of single-family and multifamily housing, land consumption, and average residential densities. The program generally gives the council the ability to assess the available land supply in the communities that participate in the program, and then monitor the density of the new development for comparison with the council density policies. And the density policies for areas that are covered by our wastewater system, and that policy is a minimum average of 3 units per net developable acre in these communities. The participating communities, the way that the program works is that the participating communities are asked annually to submit information about their approved residential plats, which are basically land subdivision at the point of the plat monitoring, that is, from the previous year. So, for example, this year we asked for 2019. We wait for the entire year to end. So they report on their platting activity with a copy of the plat, and then based on this information, the net acreage of development is calculated through taking out the undevelopable land, which is defined as areas that are like natural water bodies and wetlands, public parks and open space, arterial road right-of-way, and land that is set aside for future development. And this data leads to measuring the net density of the residential development. The result of the program is not only used for monitoring purposes, but as I mentioned, communities receive a credit for higher density plats, which gives them a flexibility in responding to the market when platting lower density residential developments. Because our density requirements and land use policies are community-wide and are not development specific. So they can go with one development that is lower in density and one that is higher, and across the community, they need to be meeting the requirements. So the plat monitoring program is a crucial implementation tool in reviewing comprehensive plan updates, amendments, and sewer extension permits in developments that are lower than the 3 units per acre. And that's how the credit helps the communities, because it captures those developments before the permitting process. So the communities are basically encouraged to report as far back as 2000, even though several of them have joined the program well after year 2000. Like, we still encourage them to go back and report all the way. Next slide, please. Thank you. There are currently 45 communities who participate in the annual plat monitoring program. This does include the first 12 volunteer communities that are Blaine, Chanhassen, Eden Prairie, Hugo, Inver Grove Heights, Lakeville, Maple Grove, Ramsey, Savage, Shakopee, Waconia, and Woodbury. These are the 12 communities that first joined. And then at the moment, as I mentioned, there are 45 communities in the program. Next slide, please. So the participating communities designation in Thrive MSP 2040 includes Suburban Edge, Emerging Suburban Edge, and Rural Center. Those are in the previous round of the Regional Development Guide. They were identified as developing, and now this is the corresponding community designation. Next slide, please. So this is also figure 4 of the report that you had. This shows the mix of single family and multifamily units through the life of the program from 2000. Overall, there are about an equal number of single family and multifamily units platted. There's 54% single family and 46% multifamily units. In 2019, communities platted 3,420 single family and 2,893 multifamily units through 127 plats, which is about the average through the program. As you can see in the chart, though, in 2003 was the highest number of units platted that went over 10,000 units. Then the number gradually came down to its lower point in 2009, when throughout the participating communities, only 286 units were platted. And that's consistent with the development proposal and activity with the market crash. And since then, the activity has been gradually increasing. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is figure 7 from the report, and that shows the actual units platted in green, the green bars, and the vertical lines show the allowable range of units. That's based on minimum and maximum allowable density. So if all the plats that were reported were subdivided at the lowest or highest density that was defined by the land use, that bar shows how many units would have been built. In 2019, the lowest allowable units was 4,972. That's the dot on the bottom. And then the highest allowable unit was 10,467. There were a total of 6,313 units that were platted in 2019, which is below the midpoint of 7,700. As you can see on the chart, though, communities have been mostly platting units around the midpoint or just below it, which basically suggests that there is a demand for lower densities in the market for communities that are participating in the program on that developing edge. Next slide, please. Thank you. So throughout the years, communities have recorded a variety of densities for development, or in many cases, they have recorded no new plats, no new residential plats, that is. But here in figure 8 from the report, what I want to emphasize is that the green line on the top, and that shows the overall net density in these communities since 2000, except for 2009, when with the market crash. The net residential density has been at or above the minimum allowable density based on council policy at 3 units an acre. So it's been consistently meeting the council policy, except again for 2009 when it dropped below the 3 units an acre. But again, this is just the plats density, not necessarily the entire density. And the plat monitoring program information, as I said, is one of the pieces that goes into reviewing plans. In 2009, the overall net density of development for the participating communities was 3.8 units per acre, which is an increase from 2018. I should mention that part of it could be due to the fact that more communities did not report platting activity in 2018, which is likely due to how busy they have been with their local comprehensive plan updates. But as I mentioned, plat monitoring program is in a way that you can always go back and report more platting activity. Next slide, please. The council calculates net density by taking out what's considered undevelopable, as I mentioned earlier, for calculation of net density. Wetlands, water bodies, public parks, open space, arterial road right-of-way, and land set aside for future development. So that one, the land set aside for future development in this chart is marked as other, and this is figure 9 of your staff report, by the way. Communities are actually, they're encouraged to take the most advantage of the land that they have available with private lots and local streets. So we don't take out local streets. They're encouraged to be smarter in the design of the subdivisions. The highest net residential acres was again in 2003 and then in 2000. You can observe that while less net residential acres have been platted compared to those peaks, there are more land set aside for future development as other. That's the pink bar in this chart. Next slide, please. So this is figure 10 of the staff report. This shows the overall platting activity around the region in the participating communities. As I mentioned, there are areas, the communities that are participating, these are areas that are within MUSA and on the developing edge of the region. So in this chart, you will see that the areas that are grayed out, those are the communities that are developed or considered developed. And then the green areas are the areas that are outside of MUSA. You'll see there are a few, in this case, there are a few exceptions for communities that are on the plat monitoring program, but still are considered developed. This is just trying to mix the previous regional development guide with Thrive, and there's a bit of difference there, but they still have land available to plat. Next slide, please. Thank you. We're going to stay on this slide for a little bit. This year, we added a new section to the report. We tried to analyze the amount of time that it takes from platting a site to issuing a development permit. And that amount of time, that duration, is known as lot absorption. Lot absorption shows the availability of, I apologize about the cat noises in the background. Lot absorption shows the availability of platted lots and the community's capacity to issue development permits if the demand is there. So the longer the lot absorption, the more platted land is readily available. So it means that they platted the land, but the development didn't happen. So the land is basically sitting there graded, ready to go. And then the shorter lot absorption shows a stronger demand and rapid growth in an area. Tracking this information, we're hoping that it can help us inform growth patterns, land capacity, forecasting, and the permitting process. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we use the permit data that the research department collects annually and then combine that with the platting information. Since the geocoded data for the permits only go as far back as 2009, this analysis basically only includes the past 10 years of permits. The platting for that site could have happened well before 2009, but it's only the last 10 years of permits. It has taken communities somewhere between 0 and 18 years, based on the information that we have on hand, for these plats in all counties to receive a development permit. 0 basically signifies that the development permit was issued the same year that the plat happened. So it was just a very fast turnaround. Between all the program participants, there was a very wide range of duration, and from an average duration of 0, and that was Belle Plaine and Jordan overall, to 9.2 years for the city of Orono. Overall, participating communities have experienced an average of 3.3 years for the platted lots to receive building permits for the permits that were issued between 2009 and 2019. So on this slide, the chart on the left, which is in your staff report as figure 12, shows the average time that it takes for a plat to be realized as a permit by community designation. The time was the shortest in rural residential designation with 0 years, followed by diversified rural with 1.8. However, both of these averages are based on only 1 or 2 plats, so they don't necessarily signify the majority of platting and permitting activity. Most of the activity has occurred in suburban edge and emerging suburban edge community designations. The time between platting and permitting was 2.9 years in suburban edge and 3.8 years in emerging suburban edge. I apologize. The chart on the right in your staff report as figure 13 shows the average time based on the type of development permit that was issued. So as shown here, accessory dwelling units and duplex, triplex, and quads have experienced the shortest amount of time between platting and permitting, with 1 or 2 years respectively. I should mention though that in all of this, there was only 1 ADU permit. So that's, again, just like the previous chart, it doesn't represent a large number of permits, it's just this one. The townhomes have taken the most amount of time with an average of 4.1 years. Next slide, please. Great, thank you. Before I conclude the report, I do want to say that you will find a summary of density by community in the staff report. That's at the very end of the staff report. And I should have mentioned in the past slide that a lot of this analysis, the plat monitoring, is a sort of a, to some extent, voluntary program for reporting, but so the accuracy of the information that we provide depends on the information that we receive through this program. So there may be some discrepancy, I shouldn't say discrepancy, there may be some adjustments and refinements that happen throughout the time as communities report platting activity better every year. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mrs. Smiley. And I couldn't even hear your cat, so that wasn't
great.
too disruptive.
I could hear him very loudly, so I wasn't sure.
Okay. Any questions on that report? Questions? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Raya. This is interesting. I remember learning about all of this last year when I was on newer to the council. So this is great. And one quick question on those plats: is the length of time driven by the number of units within the plat? Because just in my own experience, especially when you're, it's developing communities like Plymouth was, where, we would maybe have a couple hundred units coming through a development, which took a lot of time, from beginning to end? Or are you literally just looking at permits for each unit within the plat? How do you calculate that time span? And obviously in your report, one unit happened quickly because somebody wanted to build, right? And so does that factor into that or not?
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. I would say that some of what you're mentioning, definitely, like that part of the report can definitely be refined. As I mentioned, this is a new section that we added this year, and we can refine that further with the amount of information that we have. In terms of how many units were, I'm sorry, I'm pulling up that chart here so I can take a look at it while I'm answering your question. The information is based on the development itself. So when it says like multifamily, it could be 5 or more units, and that's what it's talking about. It's like specifically about one building. It, like for townhomes, it takes them one by one, and for a development that has more than one unit in it, then they will be all together. So that's my understanding of our permit data, and then just putting it on top of the platting activity. In terms of what you're mentioning, and I'm sure that we can refine that further with the number of units in each subdivision and development to try to see whether there are other factors that we can analyze in terms of the duration. Maybe there's something else that impacts in terms of like a multifamily or single family, that proximity of several single family parcels right next to each other, does that factor into the duration? That's a part of analysis that we didn't do this year, and we can certainly look into adding that next year. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Raya. That did. And, in looking at all of this again last year and understanding it, which I think it's great, and I'm really glad that communities are participating. But it's interesting too, because the supposition is that the communities, especially in the core, are fully developed. But, we're seeing them redevelop, and densities, especially in the city of Minneapolis, is growing. I mean, what is their downtown population? Over 50,000 now, and it's grown significantly. And so, it's just another piece of information that I think is really good for us to keep an eye on. And I'm just wondering if the original goals for when we started tracking this are still being met. I know, of course, you've adapted and added some data in here, but if there's anything else that we need to be doing, because my instincts are telling me, are we tracking to make sure communities are developing at density goals they need to? Sorry, I have dogs. And then also just watching those density and development patterns as they play out over the years. I can talk to you offline about it too, but this stuff is fascinating to me, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Chair, Councilmember Johnson, I really appreciate your comment on this. I do want to say that regarding the developed communities, this is not to say that those communities are not seeing any growth or new units. This is mainly for land that has never been platted before. So this is for greenfield development. And in terms of redevelopment, there's another program that our research department is working on. That's the redevelopment monitoring program. I know they're working. I'm sure you're going to be hearing about that in trying to track what's happening in those communities. So this program doesn't take into consideration infill and redevelopment. It's just greenfield development. But you're right. There's certainly, we can certainly look into and seeing how else we can expand this program. I can say that there have been a few cases in reviewing this round of comprehensive plans that we did use the plat monitoring information for calculation of density for the communities where they needed it to to show that they're consistent with the council policy. So it has definitely had that positive impact for communities. But we're certainly open to expand it however we can and use this vast amount of data that we have somehow and like put it in better use, because we do collect quite a bit of information.
Well, thank you. Further questions on the report or discussion? Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also appreciated that duration by housing type. We used a similar measure when I was on the city council to gauge whether we had the right mix of zoning, and that was how many years of lots we had available in different types. It gives you an idea whether your mix of zoning is working or not, I guess, because we found before the downturn really got bad, townhouses died out first. And we ended up with this huge backlog of townhome lots. And then when things picked up again, some of them ended up being replatted as single family because it took a while for the townhome market to come back again. So it's an interesting a measure. And to Councilmember Johnson's comments, a lot of developers, at least down here, hedge their bets by doing phased development rather than doing the whole development at once, which is why you see that pink. I was surprised though at how long the multifamily took, because usually multifamily, you plat it and build it right away because you've already decided exactly what you're going to build. So the 2 years plus for multifamily is surprising to me, and I'd be interested in hearing more offline about that. I don't want to run the meeting for, take too much time in the meeting, but I would be interested in hearing more about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mrs. Stein, did you have a response?
Oh, I was just gonna thank Councilmember Wolf. I think what you're saying is very valid. We can certainly spend more time and dig into the information of what's happening. These data points were like thousands of data points and kind of putting together in the past 10 years, but we can certainly dig in a little further and figure out what's going on. And also the other thing, as I mentioned, is that our data is as good as the information that we receive. So it is possible that in some cases the plat was reported in the wrong year, for example, and then that impacted the average year. So it should be taken with a slight grain of salt. I don't think it's that off, to be honest, but I think it's still very valuable to see. It still represents the activity overall, but we may not be able to dig into every single development necessarily that accurately. But we can do that. I mean, I'm saying we can't do that on this chart, but we can certainly do that. We have the information.
Thank you. Further questions or discussion on this report? Any further discussion? This is fascinating data. I think, I look forward to the further analysis as well. And like you, Councilmember Johnson, I really find this fascinating. Councilmember Wolf. Well, further discussion. Oh yeah, Councilmember Johnson.
I'll be quick. And Ryan, we can do this offline too, but if it was because of maybe held up funding sources, for example, in multifamily where it might have affordable components, I'm not sure at what part the plat gets filed, but I think you can file a plat. I could be wrong. I should know this, but but maybe the funding pieces aren't all there yet. And so I'm just curious if we can, if that data comes through or not, because I know personally in my own community, we gave approvals, things, got, moving forward, but, they were waiting for, Minnesota Housing or whoever for funds along the way, federal, state, local. Just curious if that is responsible for slowing any of that up.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. What you're saying doesn't come through the plat information. the information that we received through the plat monitor, I can tell what is senior housing, what is affordable housing, but it doesn't necessarily go into that detail. And I don't think the permit data does that either. So it would be, we can certainly look into extracting the affordable projects separate from the rest of the projects. Like, does that have would that make a difference in terms of the duration? But in terms of the funding sources, I think we're going to have to look into it on a case-by-case basis, because I don't think the permit data has that, but I may be wrong. I can certainly look into that.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion on the report? Further discussion? All right, seeing none, thanks again, Ms. Smiley, for the work on this and for the report.
Thank you.
Look forward to hearing more next year. Yeah. Let's see. Going back to the agenda, I think that was our final information item. Yeah, it was. So, committee members, any other business? Director Barajas, anything?
Chair, this is Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson.
Yeah, go for it.
I just have one thing. I just want to remind folks, you should have gotten in your emails information from the Parks team regarding the promotional tools and assets to share with your folks. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that and share that, it would be wonderful if you could. I believe that email just came out last week.
Thank you for the reminder, Councilmember. Any other issues? Michelle, do you need anything from us?
No, we're good.
Okay, well, seeing no further business before this committee, we're adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.